Welcome to the Young Americans Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Shahoven.
I'm Joe Modesto.
I'm Danny.
I'm Bailey.
All right, Joe, if you could hit us with the first question of the day.
All right, so what do you guys think was the greatest advancement, or who was the greatest contributor to the modernization and industrialization post-Civil War?
I mean, as hands down, it's got to go to Cornelius Vanderbilt. I mean, so you had the railroad tracks, right? And they were all different widths, right? And so back then, that's like the 1870s equivalent of 50 different phone chargers, right? And then some miracle of a dude came out and came the standardized USB, exact same thing, just for railroads and older. So yeah, that's my pick.
I would say it was Carnegie, because he had the vertical integration business strategy where the company runs each strategy of production. So you have this incredibly innovative and efficient way of creating capital, producing, without the worry of a competitor, of other competition, especially when you're a company that big. And without the labor restrictions, because labor restrictions of the 1890s, you don't really have the restrictions. You don't really have child labor laws. You don't have hour laws. You really don't have anything preventing a big business from.
Yeah, I mean, I see that, but the issue with that is like the old days, right? People would get a satisfaction from creating something start to end, but doing this process that you're saying, you'd have one worker do the same tedious task over and over and over again, and he never got to see it from start to finish. While the company,
I think that's what made it incredibly efficient.
That's what made it the efficiency.
That's the efficiency's the entire reason why the industrialization really started to kick up, because you didn't have to worry about how I was going to get there through the trains, like you said, or do I have enough resources, right? Do I have enough people, especially because you have all these immigrants now.
I wouldn't count, labor strikes as efficient, but yeah, sure, I see where you're coming from.
Right. Well, laissez-faire capitalism is incredibly efficient,
for sure.
But then it isn't moral, obviously.
Yeah, I got
Modern day, no.
Any other nominations for most or biggest contributor to innovation?
I think y'all covered it.
We covered it? All right, Joe, if you could lead us into our next question.
All right, our next question is, were the people, such as Carnegie, Vanderbilt, J.P. Morgan, were they geniuses economically or through business, or were they robbers? Were there people who stripped from workers and though helped the industrialization, did they really just have no morals?
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Sorry,
it's a long question. I'm really sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I made it long. I need to. Were the big business owners were big business owners geniuses economically, or robbers?
Or thieves? Yeah. So I mean, I gotta go with big business. I mean, just geniuses, because you just look at some of the people, and it's a lot of times they're very dehumanized, right? So just for having a lot of money, they're very dehumanized in that sense. And I mean, look at it. I believe it was Carnegie, huge philanthropy guy, right? He sold his business and he donated to charity. He donated money for universities, for libraries, parks, and all that. And he believed in giving back to society. So I mean, it's just the contributions you get to society from that. It's hard to think of them as thieves. But then again, I do understand the other side, where it's 90% of the nation's wealth was controlled by 10% of the people.
And that sounds familiar, doesn't it? We do see some modern day things.
Yeah.
Modern day big business. How does that relate, right? And obviously that's a whole other conversation.
Oh yeah, for sure. But just making that connection from the 1800s to now, 2 centuries later.
Yeah. For me, it's more of a to what extent kind of thing.
I got you.
You look at the fact that you have all these complex business structures coming to be. For example, like I said, the running each sense of production. At the same time, you do have them dehumanizing their workers. I mean, There were they think the workers as just completely replaceable people. If they die on the job, we'll have someone 3 hours back. We'll hire someone back anyway, right? They really don't respect their workers at all. But I
Absolutely,
mean,
they're
I
numbers. They're not people. I got you.
right. So I think that is I think that has to be acknowledged, but I do think they are more geniuses, just because you had people who were poor. Carnegie,
Yeah,
for example, again, he was a Scottish immigrant. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like, it's not like he was
for sure.
the richest of people.
I mean, for him, like his business. I mean, Carnegie Steel, and I believe it was in Pittsburgh, if I'm not mistaken. Pittsburgh in World War II ended up making more steel than Germany, Italy, and Japan put together.
Right.
For World
I
War
mean,
II.
well, you
Pittsburgh
had the
alone.
rise of the Rust Belt during this era too,
Yeah.
and another connection. I mean, you still have that as a very important part of the United States. These blue collar workers are still there. I mean, you have Western Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, right? These blue collar workers, and obviously, big discussion today, especially politically.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I think that some were far worse than others. Carnegie, I don't know how humble he
One
was
of
as
the
a
better
person.
ones, but yeah, I mean, then you
I
have
think-
some of the worst people, like the oil. I
Right.
believe it was Rockefeller.
Right.
So, hate to cut you
And
off,
Thomas-
but if we
yeah.
could go into our last question of the day.
Our last question of the day is going to be: how did civil rights progress? What kind of laws and advancement did we have moving forward? How do we advance socially as a nation, morally as a nation?
Absolutely.
So, go ahead.
I mean, so first of all, I mean, it's just like you have like kids getting. But yeah, let's describe kind of the situation before the whole civil rights labor thing took over, and it was, I mean, you have kids getting black lung and popcorn lung and all that from working in the mines for 10 hours a day. You have women working in the textile industries for 12 hours a day. Just
Right.
things like that, and it's obviously we need to change. There are times in our nation where it is very obvious something needs to change, and that was definitely one of them. All right.
For me, I'm gonna say we did. I think we progressed as a nation and socially through in all aspects. Really, I mean, you had women. I said like 1/5 of women did work for wages, though that's an incredibly small proportion, especially in the minds of someone in 2019. That's a big deal of
Yeah,
women
for
working
sure.
for a wage, right? So they're
Yeah.
probably working for a big business of some sort, right?
Of course.
You did have these labor unions pushing for 8-hour days, right?
Yeah.
Um,
And really, kind of the biggest
yeah.
part of the Civil Rights Act was you had the strikes, successful or unsuccessful, and you had the unions, right? And
Right.
they were really the people who got it done. It wasn't just like, oh, like some politicians just going to sign it into law. No, really, it's a good thing to see when it's the people are the backbone of the change. And that is
Right.
exactly what we see here. You have the Great Railroad Strike of 1877. You have, lots of fun stuff.
Because you
like
have
that.
all this coal, iron, copper, lead, timber, oil, everything, really.
Yeah. All the fun
And-
stuff.
And you have people. You have exploitation. Obviously, that's what every single company did, no matter how you look at it. Exploitation of the environment, the people. To an extent, everyone did. But you now, aside from that, you now have racially more equal things, even though it's still bad. Because I mean, 1865, when this era begins, the rise of industrial America, you still have the black codes. I mean, Jim Crow and the Civil Rights Act. It'll still be another 100 years before we really see another huge change.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
You have kids. I think the kids no longer going to work. You have you do have child labor, but that's starting to change. You want the unions are pushing.
And wages as well. I mean, why did the kids have to go and work in the first place? Because they had to go and help their family put some food on the table. So
Right.
they made it so, you have the adults in the family go out and work, and you don't have to have the children going out and work, and they can get an education if they're fortunate enough and go do something a little more productive than mining coal.
Right.
So I think a
I
6-year-old's ability to mine coal is rather limited.
Yeah,
I think a
like
lot.
10. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. I cut you off. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Joe?
Alright, no, go ahead. I was gonna make.
Oh, I just think a lot did progress because there were changes that were sort of minor but also pretty major. Like a lot more was able to get done for people that weren't originally able to do that before. Like
Right.
there was a pretty big progression, I feel, than there was before that time era.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's an excellent point.
Thank you. I'm very intelligent on the matter.
All right. Well,
As one.
the, final words, anybody?
No, I think I'm good.
We had late 1800s, Reconstruction, huge boom, the economy, really the rise of America. This is kind of where America starts to the road for superpower status, right? And it all has to start with your industry. So late 1800s, very fun time. But unless you're a child worker. Anyways, this has been the Young Americans podcast, signing off.